Imagine waking up in a room you don't recognize, with a body you don't fully control, surrounded by two dead strangers, and having absolutely no idea who you are. That's the opening of Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And your first instinct watching or reading Ryland Grace piece himself together from scratch might be, I would never handle that. I'd be curled up in a ball in a corner. I'd be screaming. But here's the thing, you've already done a version of that. You just didn't notice. For anyone who hasn't read Andy Weir's novel or seen the movie, and no major spoilers here, Project Hail Mary follows a lone astronaut who wakes up on a spaceship with no memory, no crew, and a mission to save humanity that he doesn't remember volunteering for. The character's name is Ryland Grace. He's not a hero, he's not a soldier or a billionaire genius. He's a middle school science teacher. And the more you learn about why he ended up on that ship, the more unsettling the picture gets. Because Grace isn't exceptional in the ways we usually celebrate. He's exceptional in ways most of us would rather not admit we share. The amnesia concept isn't just a storytelling device, it's actually a precise psychological metaphor. Here's what Ryland Grace does when he wakes up with nothing. He invents himself through behavior. He doesn't know his name, but he notices that he's curious. He notices that he makes jokes to no one. He notices that problems calm him down instead of panicking him. He builds an identity from the evidence of his own actions. Now, when did you last do that? Probably more recently than you think. Every time you start a new job, move to a new city, end a relationship, or survive something hard, you are, in a smaller but very real way, waking up in an unfamiliar room. You look around. You see what you do when no one's watching. You notice what you reach for. And slowly, you reassemble yourself. The psychologist Dan McAdams calls this the narrative identity, the story we tell ourselves about who we are. And like Grace, most of us are writing that story after the fact, not before. We don't know who we are and then act on it. We act and then decide what it means. Grace just has the courtesy to do it with all the lights on. Here's something the book reveals gradually. Ryland Grace was chosen for this mission partly because of his self-doubt. The people who selected him understood that a man who didn't fully trust his own conclusions would keep checking his work. He'd question himself right up until he found the answer. That's a radical reframe of imposter syndrome. We treat it like a bug, this nagging voice that says, you don't belong here. You're going to be found out. Someone smarter is on their way. And for Grace, that voice is constant. He second guesses his own memory. He rederives math he probably already knew. He refuses to commit to a conclusion until he's run the numbers 3 more times. And, big spoiler, he saves the world. Imposter syndrome at its most functional is just epistemic humility with bad PR. It keeps you honest. It keeps you curious. It keeps you from calcifying into someone who stopped learning because they decided they already knew enough. The question isn't how to silence that voice. The question is whether you're using it to keep moving or letting it convince you to stop. Mild spoiler territory, but nothing that ruins the book or film. Just a heads up. This is the part of Grace's psychology that I think hits people the hardest, even if they can't articulate why. Grace forms the most important relationship of his life with someone who is, by every measurable standard, completely alien. Different biology, different senses, different relationship to language, different everything. And yet, it works. Not despite the differences, but almost because of the effort required to bridge them. There's a psychological principle here called the pratfall effect. The idea that difficulty and imperfection in a relationship often deepen rather than undermine it. Effort signals investment. Struggle signals that the other person is worth the struggle. Think about your most meaningful relationships. Odds are the ones that shaped you most weren't the easy ones. They were the ones where you had to reach across class or background or temperament or belief to find the person on the other side. Grace doesn't choose his situation. He doesn't choose who shows up. But he chooses every day to keep reaching. That choice is as human as anything in the story. So, are you more like Ryland Grace than you know? You've woken up somewhere unfamiliar and had to invent yourself from behavior. You've carried imposter syndrome into rooms where you absolutely belonged. You've built your most important connections through effort and friction rather than with ease. What the story does, what good fiction always does, is let you see those experiences from the outside, from a distance where they look less like failures and more like the actual shape of a human life. Grace doesn't become heroic because he's fearless. He becomes heroic because he keeps going while being afraid. He keeps working the problem. He keeps reaching across the gap. You've been doing that longer than you realize. Hey, if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see me cover some of your favorite characters, leave it in the comments. And you're really going to enjoy this one.